بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين بعد الخلائق أجمعين سيدنا وسندنا وشفيعنا مولانا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. Thank you guys for coming once again to the second part of the workshops. I know everybody's probably had iftar, some of you are sleepy. Thank you for being able to make it. I want to start with something very important before I get to the second part of our discussion today, specifically with regards to empathy, with regards to emotional intelligence, because that's going to be a big part of our discussion. Boys, can I get you guys to just sit right at the front, please? Yeah, just fill in the seats that are at the front. Thank you so much. I want to start off by talking about something called the knowledge paradox. And it's interesting how susceptible we are to changing the way we think, or how we see or how we view other people giving us knowledge, because there's a paradox to the way that we learn. The more that we start to know, and the more that we start to understand, there's a very big paradox to our lives. And it's the more that we know, the more we actually, do not know. And the more that we actually yearn to strive to learn more. Take this circle here as an example, okay? This middle circle is known as the circle of knowledge. And I'm going to label that with KN, as knowledge. This outer circle is the circle of ignorance, okay? Known as the circle of, not knowing. So I'm going to label that IG for ignorance. And the circle of knowledge, which is inside, has got an outer layer, which is your grasp and your verge and knowing how much out there you know and how much out there you don't know. The more that I expand this circle, and the more the circle grows, my knowledge grows, as you can see these arrows are coming out, the more I shade black in here, indicating that I start covering more and that I actually learn more. Let's say the circle grows and becomes this big, and my outer covering and layer is now this big. If my circle of knowledge grows, what also has happened? Ignorance has decreased, that's true. So ignorance has decreased. What else? Knowledge has? What's happened to knowledge? Increase. KN. Increased. What else has happened? There's something that's really interesting that happens when this process takes place. The more you, how'd you come to that conclusion? Jasmine says, the more you know, the more you don't know. How'd you come to that conclusion? Exactly. The more you expand the circle here, the more knowledge you start gaining, the more you realize there's so much space out here that I haven't covered, that there's so much more for me to actually start to understand and know. And the paradox in life is the more you expand your circles, the more you realize there's so much more for you that you haven't known. Imagine for a second we turn off all the lights here. And I take a small flashlight. Let's say none of you have been here before. This is the first time that you get here. And I turn off the lights. And I take a small flashlight and I point it at the Shabab Al-Sibtayn logo, right? When I point at that logo, you start knowing something greater, right? Your circle increases because you know something very small. The fact that you've seen the Shabab Al-Sibtayn logo raises another 1,000 questions for you. And you all of a sudden start to realize, wow, there's so much more about this place that I might have not known. What other things are there in this place that's unknown to me? And the paradox of life is the more you realize you've come to certain conclusions, as much as you know, the more you realize you don't know. Because sometimes people have this attitude that I've got it all. My worldview is set. Unless you challenge that worldview, and unless you come and say, look, what I know can be challenged and proven wrong, and I might be totally wrong in what I say, then you won't really get somewhere in life. And the smart and wise people are the ones who say, look, I know how much I know. And I know there is a lot for me that I don't know. Because there's some people who know, but they don't know that they don't know. You know what I'm saying? They don't know, but they don't know that they don't know. That's called compound ignorance. And there are those who don't know, but they know that they don't know. I know that I might not know this. Some say no. I don't know, and I don't know that I don't know. It's a compound type of ignorance. The smart person says, look, I understand that with the increase of my knowledge is the increase of how much I don't know. And the reason I say this is because in the lectures and in the workshops, my goal is to get people to go out there and say, look, there's so much more that I do not know. And there is so much more that I need to understand, which I need to get a grasp of. And if I don't, then I won't really understand life, okay? This is known as the knowledge paradox. And the paradox of knowledge is the more we gain it, the more we know, the more we actually do not know. The more books we open to study, the more oceans that we discover. The more creatures that we think we know, the more we actually discover. And it continues on and on and on. And that's just the human phenomena. There's a knowledge paradox. As much as we are given here, there's a lot more that we do not know. Even in the lectures, what I really hinted to this year was this idea of questioning. Because as much as you think you know, there is so much that you do not know. And that's very, very practical. Okay? Let's get back to the reason I point this out is because I want everybody to come here with an open heart. I want people to come with hearts which are open in the sense that I'm here to maybe benefit the speaker and benefit from the speaker. I'm here with a heart which says, look, I might have issues in my life. I might have problems in my life. I might have marital problems in my life. I might have problems with my friends, with my family, and I want to take care of those problems. I want to get along with people better. Or I want to lead and manage people better. Those people who are realistic, who are genuine in their hearts, are people who understand this concept that they don't know, and all of us should understand that. And two, they are very genuine. Here's my question to you guys. What are some characteristics of genuine people? And what are some characteristics of ungenuine people? Because I think genuineness is an extremely important concept when we talk about empathy and all this. What's a genuine person in your opinion? You can just raise your hand and let me know. What's a genuine person? What was that? Honest, okay. Honest, what else? Confident. Well, what if I'm confident but I'm not genuine? Like I'm confident, but I'm not real. But I'm confident. So I don't think confidence lies there, but that's a good try. Anybody else? Sister. A generous person? Okay. A generous person. There's a special definition of genuine I'm looking for. Yes, Brother Ahmed. Trustworthy. Okay. Oops. Okay. Trustworthy? Yes. Active listener, okay. Any other ones? Yes. Open, I'll take one more from the brothers. Knowledgeable, because the person has knowledge. Let me say this. Perhaps the key to understanding human relationships and human leadership is to be or try to be a genuine person. In Arabic, what's the Arabic word for a genuine person, for a sincere person? Sadiq, okay, what else? What do we call, Mukhlas, true, a mukhlas person. What is the characteristic of a genuine person? And here's my argument to this. Because if people say a genuine person is an honest person, I know a ton of honest people who just aren't genuine when they talk. There's something about being genuine that makes people believe in us and follow us, and there's a key to tapping into it, okay? Because a generous person does not always have to be, Hassan, that one's running out too. I just tried it. Okay, the green one. Thanks. Because a genuine person can be open, can be trustworthy, can be an active listener, can be knowledgeable, but does not necessarily have to be very, very genuine. That person might be fake in the way that they're saying things or in what they are saying. So what determines a genuine person, right? And according to leadership, to the leadership scientists, a person who is put as genuine is a person who never signals right and goes left, and never signals left and goes right. A genuine person is a person who will look at you and say, I'm going to do this and do that. And does not signal left and go right, and will never signal right and go left. They will never do the opposite of what they tell you. That's a genuine person. That's a person who's very straightforward, who will come and tell you it like it is. A person who will come and say to you, I'm going to do this, and actually does that. Because a lot of the times when it comes to this empathy and all these things, most people are not genuine, but they are fake. They will give you the assumption that I care about you, or they will give you the assumption that I'm real to you, or I feel for you, but in reality they don't. They're not feeling it. Hence the key to this empathy, leadership, emotional intelligence is this idea of sincerity and ikhlas. And ikhlas is defines this idea, not just sitting, many people think that ikhlas comes from sitting or praying together. Wow, this guy's a real mukhlas. Or we see the person running around helping out in the mosque. Wow, you're such a mukhlas. And that's not it at all. A person who's genuine is a person who will never signal left and go right. A genuine person never does that. They will always do what they tell you they will do. A very straightforward person, right? And we love those kinds of people because those people are people we can trust. Those people we know that they might not sit and talk to us a lot, but when they do it from the depths of their heart. Those people might not always show they care, but when they do start caring, you know that this person gives it 100%. That's known as genuineness, and people feel genuineness. People sense genuineness. If there's something that people sense about other people, it's how genuine you are. And that's what makes you believable and not believable. Because many people think, look, when it comes to relationships and leadership, I'm coming and I'm giving my heart out. People just don't react to me. And it's because you haven't been genuine. You haven't done it from your heart where people actually truly believe that you mean it. Because you're telling the person, I care about you. When they turn their backs, you're talking against them. Or you're not supporting them. Or you're in your heart, you're judging them or doubting them. And genuineness is key to mastering any of this. Knowing that I should do this from my heart and I should truly, truly care, or else it will never mean anything. Because you can't look at a person and say, I'm actively listening to you, but in my mind I'm judging you. In my mind I'm saying everything against you. In my heart I'm like, this person's wrong, this person's wrong. I can't wait till they shut up so I can reply to them. Right? A lot of people are like that. There's no genuineness in that conversation. When that genuineness is removed, a big problem occurs. Now let's get to this empathy part here. Okay? We spoke a little bit about empathy in one of the lectures, I think 4 or 5 nights ago. And what we said about empathy is actually this ability to take yourself and put yourself in someone else's shoes. Now, in this portion, the reason I bring up emotional intelligence is because emotional intelligence is used as a conflict resolver. Emotional intelligence solves conflict between people. If there's one big thing that many people complain from, is this idea that I've got a conflict with someone and I want to resolve that conflict. I've got an issue and I want to resolve that issue. Because if I don't resolve that issue, then it's going to be in my mind and in my heart. Whether that issue is with a parent, with another human being, with a spouse, with a wife, with a husband, whatever it is, right? Issues exist. And this is the problem control part of how to actually solve issues when speaking to other people. And tomorrow we'll get into the actual one-on-one practical, how do I practically sit with someone and solve the issue. And that's where we'll set up the chairs and we'll have 2 people kind of having role plays, one listening and one talking, giving a problem. And I'll be part of that, inshallah. We'll work it out, see how we can do it. But today there's a very important bit that I need to go through. And if it's understood, it can really change our lives. When this was given to me, it completely changed the way I ran my life. I saw people differently. I respected people differently, okay? Now, before we start, there's a big difference between tolerance and respect, okay? Who can tell me the difference? What's tolerance and what's respect? What's the difference between tolerating somebody and respecting someone? Come on, somebody's got to know. Is anybody here tolerating me? Reza is tolerating me. Reza, why are you tolerating me? Yeah, he has no choice. I'm forced upon him. What's respect? What's the difference between tolerance and respect? Yes. Ahsant. Perfect. Tolerance is when you look at someone, right? And you can obviously see as you're talking to them from your heart, you don't feel you don't feel that closeness that you want to. Tolerance is marked by a spark or a hurt in the heart against someone. When that person's there, if you tolerate them, you're like, oh God, please don't look at me. I don't want to shake hands with you. Don't look at me. Oh, he's looking at me. Right? For example, that's tolerance. Respect is when you obviously have nothing in your heart against the person and you're walking up to them, the way you say hi, the way you look at them, the way you talk to them, it's very obvious that you love the person. It's coming from your heart. The way you hug them comes from your heart. The way you say hi, it comes from your heart. You're not turning around and saying, you know what, I hate everything about that person. That's a tolerant person, right? So tolerance is marked by a feeling of negativity in your heart. Respect is marked by a feeling of positivity in your heart. If you have this animosity towards anyone, a person of a different faith, a person of a different gender, a person, right, of a different mentality, right, another sister, another brother, for example, a person whom you've not had past conflict with, this will help you resolve that. And again, it comes back to genuineness. Do I feel anything in my heart about this person or not? Am I genuine in my heart or not? Let me kind of show you how it might look like. Let me get a volunteer, somebody who I know. Hamad Bilal, come, if you don't mind. Okay, let me kind of show you what genuineness looks like and what tolerance looks like. And we do this all the time. We do this all the time. Brothers and sisters do this all the time, right? Girls, when they're talking to girls, it's very obvious that you've got something against that girl's heart. And guys, when they're talking to guys, it's very obvious you've got something against that person's heart. So, if I'm, right, let's say me and Muhammad Bilal are friends, okay? We are friends. If I'm coming to him and I'm genuine in my heart, then the way I'll approach him is very different than the way that I would approach him normally. It's very obvious, right? People can feel that vibe. Even if you try to act normal, people come to you and say, look, are you okay? Is there something in your heart against that person? People feel those vibes that we put, right? You know that vibe of positivity you give someone, people feel that. Or that vibe of negativity, people feel that. So if me and Muhammad Bilal are tolerating each other, there might be where I'm turning my back, right? Very casual, Assalamu alaikum bro, how are you, how's everything, right? And we might walk away. Very basic, right? If me and Muhammad are friends, which we are, and I think he's a great brother, right? We'd come up, Assalamu alaikum bro, how are you? Good to see you, right? It's very, we might stand, we might talk, I said thank you, right? We might stand, we might talk, we might converse, you know, we might talk about his Quran recitation, any of that, and you know, we'd be best buddies. It's very obvious. The vibes you give people are very obvious. Most of the time, these vibes, people catch on to them, and that's why we have in our hearts something against people, right? So don't be fake to yourself. I want you to be real to yourself today. Be as real as possible. If there's someone that you have something in your heart against, then now I want you to ask yourself, why is it like that? And why do I feel tension between me and this person? Okay, let's move on. So empathy, this idea of taking yourself and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I spoke briefly on empathy about 3 or 4 nights ago, and we said that empathy is a scientific concept. When somebody in front of you, another human, an animal, anybody, feels some sort of pain, your body is made biologically to cringe and feel that same pain. How many of you are scared of spiders? Okay, but more brothers than sisters. That's interesting. For those of you who are scared of spiders, if the person next to you has a spider crawling up his arm, you'll feel a cringe, wouldn't you? Or if a person's scared of snakes and they see a snake, they'll cringe from inside, right? I have that, for example, because I really don't like snakes. But empathy is marked by this idea of taking yourself. Please pay careful attention to this, brothers, right? Taking yourself and putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to understand where they are coming from or what kind of experiences they've had in their lives. And empathy is really a human factor. It's not new to us. How many of you see what's going on in Gaza? What's happening? How many of you guys know what's actually happening in Gaza? Raise your hand. Okay, for those of you who don't know, they're being bombarded with bombs every single day. They are being killed. Children are being killed. Women, infants. How many of you saw pictures of that? Okay. How many of you felt bad? Your heart really felt bad. Okay. See, a lot of us feel bad. How many of you saw the plane crash that just happened in Malaysia? Right? You feel bad, don't you? That's empathy. That's the feeling of empathy inside my heart. When something happens to someone else, how do I react? Or how do I feel to that? And we all have that because it's a biological concept. And empathy is interesting because it allows us to really actively understand where the person in front of us might be coming from, right? I start to know why you act a certain way and why you are the way you are. Because there's two ways to deal with a problem, okay? Most time when there's problems between people, there's a disagreement from my end to you, and there's a disagreement from your end to me. And most people, the way they deal with it, right? Let me kind of restate. The Iraqi way to deal with it, I guess, sometimes, some people, is the way they've been raised, right? Because, perhaps that's how their parents deal with it, that's how they deal with it, is if this person is not interested in me, forget them. I don't want to get anywhere near them. If they can't think the way I think, forget them. They're wrong. They're not worth as much as we think they are. They're kuffar, blah, 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 etc. Blacklist them, put them to the side. We don't want to hear about them, right? The typical way to deal with things. That's how people think. The alternative method, which is the positive method, which if you work for a corporate or a Fortune 500 company, if you work with a professional firm, with professional human beings who really try to work together, they start to say, you know what? Yes, this person has a difference of thought than me, but can I respect them? And can I reach a level of respect for that person? Here's my question to you guys. Question. Can you respect someone who you completely disagree with on something? Is it possible? Who says yes, raise your hand. If you say you can, raise your hand. Ahmed, do you care telling us why? Actually, let me give you a scenario, okay? If there's something that's a hot topic that comes up today, then it's homosexuality. Okay, and here's what I want to say. We live in a society where the idea of homosexuals or gays is being more and more normalized, more and more normal. And the question that I ask people is, if you can respect someone who's different than you, right? Yes, we might disagree morally. Would we ever be able to reach a respect for someone who's completely different thought than us in a specific area? Or will we always have that tolerance in our hearts towards that person? I use homosexuality as one example, but there's so many different examples. An atheist, a person who has a different view, a person who thinks about something differently. Yes, I might disagree morally with you, but can I respect you as another human being standing in front of me? Because I know there's a reason why you might think like that, and we'll get to those reasons here in just a second. Is that possible? How many of you think it's possible? Somebody tell me why. Somebody tell me why. From the brothers or the sisters. Brother Ahmed, I picked on you earlier, if you don't mind. Do you mind? Okay. Do you think it's possible to respect someone who's got that different, very different approach in life? So you think respecting others is how comfortable we are in our own shoes and our own beliefs. Interesting. Anybody else has a different opinion? Brother Muhammad. A fellow human. Yeah. So kind of piggybacking on Imam Ali's quote, where he says if a person is not your brother in faith, then he's your equal in humanity. And we'll get to in a second why that's possible. It's just important to know that we're trying to move our hearts from this idea of tolerance towards anybody who has a different viewpoint and trying to reach a level of respect, right? And that's extremely, extremely difficult. It's not easy. Here's something interesting known as the iceberg model. When you look at an iceberg, and if you see this picture up here, you only see 10% of an iceberg, and everything else is underneath, okay? There are things which you might see at the top of the iceberg or the tip of the iceberg, and things which you do not see on the bottom of the iceberg. Now, some things have been listed there that you see of a human when you immediately meet them. And there are things underneath, hidden, as the 90%, which is right over here. This is the 90%, this is the 10%. Things that you don't really see of a human being. Can you tell me what are some things other than artifacts, behaviors that are visible to us in a human being when we first meet them? What are some things that we can immediately see a person and tell about them? Give me an example of things that we typically see a person and we can tell about them. Yes. So you can see the way they act. Does that tell you something about them? Not really. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sister. Sure, physical attributes can definitely help you, yeah. Even though in my case it doesn't help at all. The red hair doesn't really indicate I'm Iraqi. Yes, Brother Ahmed. Huh? Body language, yes, that's a big deal. Anybody else? Sisters? Anything else to add to the 10% that we see of a person? Brothers, anything else? 10%? Okay. So we see body language, behavior, the most basic things of people. What are some things that we don't see in the 90% other than values, assumptions, norms, and beliefs? And by the way, these are huge. The amount that we don't see of people is about 9 times greater than what we actually see of them. And that is something that you need to get embedded in your essence. You don't know a single thing other than what you see about that person. Tell me some things that might be underneath here that we might not see of people that are not written up here. Some things, yes. Hardships, yes. Emotional scars. Anybody else? What might have that person gone through? Give me some other things. There's some big ones. One specifically big one. Yes. Background. What's another word for background? Starts with a P. Past. You don't know a person's past. You don't know what that person's background is, where he's from, where she's from, what kind of upbringing she's had, what kind of upbringing he's had, what kind of life struggle, hardship he's been through. A lot of these things, we have no idea what the person has been through. Most of the time, we have no idea. And it's interesting because the way you and I do things is that when we see someone, we immediately judge them based on what? Based on the 10%. We immediately judge people based on the 10%. And that is why we have become, as a group of people, and I say this all the time, Muslims are perhaps some of the most judgmental human beings you will ever meet. Not all of them, but a very strong majority of them. Because we have this idea that when I see someone based off of his outer appearance, I can tell if he's a good person or not. I can see if he's a bad person or not. Let's play a little game to see how well we can do that. Okay, I'm going to show you a series of pictures. And I want you to guess the people in the pictures, what their occupations are, what they do. What is their daily occupation? I'm going to show you a picture, and I want you guys to be able to tell me what they are. Raise your hands, and I'll pick on you, okay? Let's go ahead and start. This lady. Raise your hand and guess her occupation. If you know it, don't say it. If you actually do know who she is. Ahmed. A nurse. Anybody else? Stylist. Why do you say stylist? The way she's wearing her coat, it's a very fancy coat. Good. That's a good sign. Yep. Anybody else? Sisters, what do you guys think she is? What's her occupation? How'd you guess that? She just has a psychologist feel to her, doesn't she? What do you think? She's smiling? Looks welcoming. Yeah. Interesting. Anybody else? Who do you think she is? Yes, sister. Dentist. How do you think she's dentist? Because she has nice teeth. Anybody here who has nice teeth better be a freaking dentist. Anybody else? What else do you guys think she is? Take one more guess and then we'll see what she is. Lawyer. Okay. Why do you say that? Interesting. Her looks have told us a lot about her, haven't they? Right? Her looks tell us a great deal about her. The way that she's standing, the way that she's smiling, the way that she's dressed. What do those clothes look to you? Do they look like normal clothes or cultural clothes? Cultural. Do you think she might be some sort of cultural model, or maybe she's not from here? Maybe she's from overseas. What do you guys think? You think she might be from overseas? Yes. Maybe she's her own culture. Sure. Okay. That's one person. That's fine. Let's take a look at this person. Who do you guys think this is? Who do you think it is? Doctor. Why do you say that? They always look like that? Yeah, they do. They do always look like that. What else? Yes, Ahmed. Academic. Why do you say that? Yeah, it's very... Yeah, exactly. It's quite obvious. Yes, brother. Politician. Why do you say that? He's smiling, huh? Those darn politicians. Okay. Sisters, what do you guys think he might be? Musician. Why do you say that? He looks like... Okay, a vibe, a musician vibe. Who else? Yes, little guy. A judge. Why do you say judge? Because of his hair. Okay. Anybody else? Lawyer. Okay. Yes. Businessman. Okay. So it's quite easy to see, what he is. Last one, and then we'll move on to... I'll tell you guys who these people actually are. Who do you guys think this guy is? Yeah, Ahmed. Terrorist. How many of you actually know who this guy is? Raise your hand. Okay. Who do you guys think he is? What is he? What is he? Is he more Arab? Does he look? He's not Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Trust me, that's not this. This is not him back in his youth days. Yes. Criminal. What else? A mullah who recites. How'd you come to that conclusion? The beard and the dasha, right? Okay. Good. That's actually a pretty good guess. A pretty good guess. Anybody else? Yes. An actor. How'd you come to that conclusion? Just actor, okay. Anybody else? Yes. A sheikh or a setter. Okay. All right. Keep your guesses in mind. Keep your guesses in mind, right? I'm going to exactly tell you who these people are. The first person is Indra. I think the way they say last name is Noi. She is a CEO of Pepsi. She's perhaps one of the strongest and most powerful women in the world. She runs a multi-million, probably multi-billion-dollar company. Extremely, extremely wealthy, extremely rich, very educated, does a lot of women feminist work, helps a lot in Africa, and in India. That's why you always see her dressed in this garb. She is originally Indian. What kind of guesses did we get for her? Dentist, lawyer, stuff like that, right? It's interesting because you see her and you think a certain thing. You're like, I can't believe this lady who looks like I would meet her in a supermarket in London is the CEO of Pepsi. This is one of the most powerful women in the world, perhaps, because she runs a multi-billion-dollar company as a woman. You don't hear that very often. The second, I think, only company who does that is like GM. They have a female as a CEO. Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff in America made off with about $5 billion worth of assets from money laundering before he was caught and put to jail for 2 life sentences. This man was so trusted. People would come to him in Wall Street. They would look at him. They would sit next to him and say, Bernie, we have $500,000 in this envelope we'd like to give to you so you can invest it in Wall Street because we're so pleased with what you do. He gained people's trust. He gained their ability to trust him. They trusted him. And when he would give them money, he would take from someone, give to another person, take from someone else, give another person, and then rotate the money as a money launderer. And that's how he did his, what he did. By the time he was, he had about $5 million worth of assets, and he was put to jail for the rest of his life. Very smart guy, but it went 2 ways. You'd see this guy in Wall Street, walking down Wall Street. You think this is a very wealthy businessman. He's driving a Ferrari, probably a high-class car, wearing a nice $5,000 Armani suit, working in Wall Street, right? He's got anything he wants, right? He owns maybe a mansion or a villa in New York. But this guy, when he was caught, people were so shocked and surprised. Bernie Madoff, one of the biggest billionaires in Wall Street, actually was doing money laundering. And that's how he made his wealth. That's how he did it. Last guy. This is interesting because this case actually happened in Dearborn, right? And like the sister said, this guy was a mullah and a reciter. He was convicted in Dearborn about 2 years ago for also money laundering for about $15 to $30 million within the Iraqi community. The Iraqi community in Dearborn went through a phase where people were so greedy. They took all their money and they gave it to this guy because they saw him as a reciter and a speaker and a mullah. He would recite on the big TV channels and people saw him reciting. He immediately won their trust. He went from a gas station worker to owning half of Matar al-Najaf because of how rich he was. And people trusted him so much in giving them his money. People just came and gave him money in garbage bags. People sold properties, took loans in order to give him money because he's promised within 6 months a 50% return on any type of money they would give him. And people were giving him money left, right, and center. There was no taxes paid, none of that. It was a completely a money laundering scheme that happened. Because he used his reputation as a mullah or a reciter or a sheikh, people immediately bought it. And 2 years ago, he was caught in America. He was convicted in a federal court, and he was convicted to about 2 to 5 years in prison, no bail. You would think, you'd see this person who might have came to the mosque, who might have done so much work, who might have been, a big part of the community, as a person who's very, very, successful. A person who is, you would see like, wow, this guy is great. Turns around, becomes a convicted felon, goes to jail for 2 to 5 years, okay? It's very, very easy for us to see someone and immediately judge them based off of that 10% right there. Because we do that all the time. It is very easy to look at a sister who might not wear hijab and judge her based on that. It's very easy to look at a brother who might not pray or who might not be religious at the moment and judge him based off of that. It's very easy to throw the terms loser, stupid, inconsiderate. It's very easy to throw the terms of non-religious, religious to anybody if you're just judging them based off this 10% and not seeing the 90%. People are a product of everything that is underneath. When I showed you guys these pictures, many of us were just looking at an outside facade. And most of the time, in his book Blink, Malcolm Gladwell says that most of the time, about 97% of the time, it takes us 7 seconds to make a first appearance or to get a first appearance of a vibe from a person that will stick a lifetime with us. How often do we sit with people and say, look, what are you feeling? Or look, what's your history? What's your background? What kind of things do you live by? What kind of principles and values do you have? How is your family like? Where are you from? How did you grow up? Are you rich? Are you poor? We don't take the time to learn these things, and we immediately judge based off of these things right here, the very, very small 10%. And that's what gets us in trouble. That's what makes us judgmental people. We don't look at everything under here and say, you know what? Even though from the outside it might not seem good, I don't know what's happening down here. And even though on the outside I might not please be with this person, or I get a negative vibe from this person might be an amazing person. I don't know. Just because he wears the imam and he's a sheikh does not make him immediately great down here. That's why I always tell people, don't judge me thinking that I'm a great person just because I sit up here. That doesn't really mean anything. Get to know a person. Talk to a person. Understand a person. That's what makes them great. And I tell a lot of people, when you get married, do not go and look for a person who's got the greatest looks, because looks will fade. And most people, when they want to get married, they talk about surface things. They'll never go to their spouse or their husband and say, look, what kind of traumatic experience did you have as a child? What kind of things did you go through? Were you in a war? Were your parents ever in a war? Did your father or mother abuse you? Were you ever hurt as a child? Were you ever physically abused? Were you ever emotionally abused? Did someone hurt you? Did someone, do something to you that really, really struck a chord with you? What inspires you? We never get a chance to learn these things about people. Sometimes we go our whole lives without even asking our parents about these things. And when someone asks us, you know what, we know this person in and out. Yeah, but how much do you know about their past? How much do you know about their emotional struggle? How much do you know about the things that make them who they are? The bits and pieces that create their world and the world's, world sphere and their understanding. How much do you know about that? And most of us know very, very little. Trust me, we know very little. I'll give you a brief story. I remember one time, and I've said this story before. I remember one time I was on an airplane going to Miami on a flight from Dearborn to Miami because, I was doing some lecturing down there. And we got on a flight, and I sat next to a guy who was a Christian. And I sat next to him, and he was reading the Bible. My friend looks at me and says, look, this guy is really religious. I was like, yeah, he looks religious. He's reading the Bible. So a lady walks by, right, and I could tell from the way she was dressed. Again, it's not bad to sometimes look at a person and say, he might be this way, or she might be that way based on how they are, but you can't make your total judgment on that. You could tell she was dressed in a very classy way, more of a more rich, tier. And she comes to the guy sitting next to me and says, look, you need to move because this is my seat. And she's right, it was her seat. And he just threw a fit. This guy did not want to get up, threw a fit. Mind you, he's reading the Bible. If someone makes a mistake towards you, forgive them, right? You're reading the Bible. You're meant to be religious. Eventually, he gets up and he moves. And I look at my friend, I was like, look, as religious as this guy was, he didn't really react in a very religious way. How religious is that? This lady sits next to me, and from the time that we take off to the time we land, us three are talking. She's talking about her work, what she does, the things she was doing back in Detroit, what she's doing in Miami. And at one point in the conversation, we start talking, I don't know how this came up, we started talking about religion and God, and life and beliefs. And she looks at me and says, look, I do not believe in God, in a very, angry way. And the Muslim I was back then was a very judgmental Muslim, I'll be very honest. My thing was, look, she doesn't believe in God. I'm going to give her every single proof I've got in the book. I might as well, right? Give her all the proof that I've got. Teach her how wrong she is. A month before that, I had taken the leadership and development course, and I had learned that take a simple step back and ask people why, it will get them to speak about how they came to those beliefs. The minute I was ready to tell her that you're wrong, this is why you should believe in God, this, and this, I took one step back. I said, look, can you tell me for a second why you believe that? And what she told me next, no matter what kind of argument I would have given her, she would have never listened to me, because she has a pain in her heart that was an emotional pain. If I had not asked why, I would have never seen it. And she was human enough to open up about that pain. She looks at me, honestly, starts crying and says, when I was a young girl, my stepfather was a priest and he physically abused me. And because he abused me, right? He would hit me, he would beat me. Because he would do that, I started hating religion. I hated the God of the Christians. And I said, no matter what I would have told this lady in that moment, no matter what argument I would have given her, she would have never believed what I said, because there was an emotional scar in her. Most of us don't even talk about these emotional scars that we have. We keep them inside, men and women. We tuck them inside. We keep them in our hearts. We let the sorrow and the pain live and grow on our hearts. And when somebody tries to come and say, hey, can you open up to me? We take them off and we shun them by being defensive or angry, because we're so hurt and we're in so much pain. Let that emotion out. Talk to people about your issues. Talk about your trauma. Talk about your problems, because that will help you. When she said that to me, I understood there is no way that I could have given this lady a logical argument, because her heart wasn't having it. She was upset. And I stepped back and we kept on talking, and she, like literally 5 minutes later, she pulls out some stones and she's like, I don't believe in God, but I believe in a greater force. And I was like, all right, well, that's God. You're just calling it a different thing. Right? So it's kind of the same, it's very similar, but she calls it a greater force. And the lesson that was learned is I immediately saw her and thought, look, she looks from a rich class, I'm going to judge her, she looks like a bad person. Turns out to be a phenomenal person. Yes, she might have not believed in the same God that I did, but there's a reason for that. There's a background for that. There's a history of why it's like that. And when we understand our parents, siblings, brothers, sisters, mothers, spouses, why they act the way they do, then we can get a very different solution from their actions. I know wives or husbands who come to their spouses, and the minute one person throws a fit or gets angry, the other person is ready to explode. Just ready to explode. Or if a mother says to her son, do this, or the mother starts to get angry, the son is very quick to explode. Because we don't realize this person is angry or upset for something that might have happened today. If I put myself in their shoes, I would have probably reacted in the same way. What we don't realize about empathy is everybody has a different background. Every person here, look at everybody sitting here, even myself, we all have a different story. We all come from different places. Even though similar places have a different story. We all have different backgrounds of family problems and things that might have happened with us. Financial problems. There's no one that's perfect, but everybody has an issue they go through. When we start to tap into people's nature and understand their issues and value their issues and their emotions, then we become very, very emotionally intelligent. And I'll be very honest to say, to me, emotions are sacred. They're not just kicked around. They're not just, when a person says, look, when I was young, I was hurt by my father, or I was hit by my father, that's a very big thing. That tells you there's a reason why the person might be this way. I'll give a brief example. Many of you guys here heard about Chris Brown beating his girlfriend Rihanna, right? Everybody hears about that, right? And people immediately come and say, look, this guy is convicted, he goes to jail, and he did it, he's got a lot of issues. Something people don't know is when he was 8 years old, he was raped. Most people don't know that. They think, just out of the blue, he decided to get up one day and punch his girlfriend, right? And beat her up and he went to jail. Most people don't know that at the age of 8, he was raped by a woman, because rape happens to men and to women. Most people don't realize that. And perhaps that's the source of his anger. That's why many psychologists say this guy is psychologically messed up because of the things that happened to him in his past. Our past and the things that happened to us are a big part of why we are where we are, because we are socially constructed beings. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. What I wanted from this activity is for us to really see that as much as we might look at these people and have a judgment for them, take a minute to see deeper than what you see. Because it's not what you see, it's what does your heart see? What does your heart tell you about the person? How do you perceive the person? How do you understand the person? How do you live with that person? What kind of background does this person go through? And in our lives, we do this every day. We look at people and we just simply judge them for who they are. And it's very wrong. It's something that's very wrong. And we do it all the time. Let me conclude with this, right? We have about 5 minutes, so we'll conclude. There's something that's interesting, and it's really the way that we humans perceive people. The way we perceive people is based off of our own relative world, meaning everything surrounds me. Everything surrounds me. I'm like, how can I say this? The center of the world, and everything is around me. And I judge everything based off of its relativity to me. Once we start to realize that we are not the center of the universe, and there are things much greater than us, and there are things much further than it for us, things that we don't even see, or things that we might not understand, all of a sudden that starts to ground us, okay? That really starts to ground us. Let me conclude with this video that I want to show. It's about a 6-minute clip. I'm thinking this will reach. All right, so I'm going to show you is a clip from a show in America. I don't know how many of you guys have seen a show called What Would You Do? What would you do? So what would you do? What they do is they take scenarios, acting scenarios, and they see which people react. Are we as human beings moral? So for example, this one, they had it where an actor and an actress, an old man and a young girl, the actor is kidnapping the young girl. And they wanted to see in a busy day in America, I forgot what city it was, in New York, Manhattan, somewhere there, busy city, who would react to this person who was kidnapping the little girl. And you would be shocked as to who reacted for the little girl getting kidnapped. Let's watch this and we'll conclude. Hopefully this works and doesn't stop midway.
What would you do if you saw someone, especially a child, in trouble? Would you jump in to help or assume that somebody else would do it? Recently, we went to the streets of suburban New York and put some folks to the test. Last time, security specialist Bill Stanton put 2 parents to the test to see if what they've taught their kids about the danger of strangers would serve them in a real-life situation. Today, he puts the public to the test. With the help of 7-year-old Raquel, Bill staged an abduction to see if the public would take action. Raquel's mom, Deborah, watched from a surveillance van as Raquel was approached by Bill.
Hey, where were you, young lady?
You're not my dad! You're not my dad!
It's unbelievable, but they did nothing.
Help me!
Bill and Raquel repeated this time after time.
Hey,
Please, someone help me! You're not my dad! Please, someone help me! You're not my dad! Please!
Still no response.
It's frightening that nobody would help.
One woman walked right by, believing someone else would take action.
never go away. Ever. You hear me? Don't you ever go away.
And why didn't she do anything?
You think that someone else will take the blame, someone else will take the responsibility.
A police sergeant on location to supervise was stunned.
I felt it was unbelievable that people just didn't want to get involved. They'd look, they'd turn around, they'd see with a commotion, but they just kept on walking. They didn't want to get involved, in my opinion.
Bill would have been long gone with 7-year-old Raquel It took hours, but two men finally listened to their
Someone
instincts.
help me! You're not like that! Someone 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 help me!
TV. Cops right there. Cops right there. Good job.
She was saying, stop, someone help me, she's not my dad, he's not my dad. And I was like, first I thought she was being a little disobedient, but then you weren't saying nothing, so I was like, we gotta stop this guy.
They parked the car and I just ran over to get him. Yeah, I was gonna take him down, man. Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen.
And I gotta tell you, all you guys were good. You spread out.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting away.
No, you wasn't going.
You guys weren't letting the bad guy go anywhere.
That was amazing. I actually had tears in my eyes, but everyone ran out and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that they did what they did. And you would expect more people to react that way.
Blue-collar workers who are working in corporations or whatever, other people are going to help them. You'd never think these two, as we would say, thugs or goons, or that some people think that all black guys are on drugs. You never think that these guys, their pants are sagging, going to come and save a girl, because we judge them. We're like, oh, these black guys are not going to come and help. No, right? A lot of these people are great people. Look at the irony. We think that the ones who would help them are the civilized, respected people. But the ones whom we might make fun of or mock are the ones who are actually helping. And this isn't only this time. I've seen so many clips of this guy, of this show, What Would You Do?, where a black guy, man or woman, come to help. Their integrity is so high. And yet you still have Arabs who still call them abid, like as if they are slaves. We still have the audacity to say words like that as a community. It's so sad when you hear somebody actually say that, because it's as if we're reverting back to the time of Jahiliyyah. But it's kind of to show us that our stereotype would tell us a white man would help a girl who's abducted. No, you've got these two black guys who you might think look like they are bad guys, look like they might be smoking something, or they might be doing something bad, or they're drinking alcohol, their pants are low, but these guys are the ones who are the first to jump to aid and to help. And the same way I say to us, when we see someone in our community, we immediately judge them. It's very easy for us to judge people. We might see a person beat differently, act differently, dress something different, or wear something more stylish, and we'll immediately judge them based off of that. And the message that if we want to understand people, we need to put ourselves in their shoes and not judge them the way they are. And I'll continue this tomorrow, because this is going to be integral as a mindset to get us to see what's going to happen tomorrow. Because most of the reason why relationships fail is because a person has come in with a specific mindset and a mentality that he's not willing to change. And that's why people never get along. And tomorrow I have a slideshow which is made from Dr. Gottman's book about the 4 horsemen. What things to not let creep into any relationship, right? And what things are going to help keep relationships alive, whether it's with a spouse, a mother, a father, brother, sister, etc. So inshallah tomorrow we'll do more of the practical. Any questions before we conclude? Any questions? Okay. How many have found what we've done today helpful? Be very honest. Yeah. If not helpful, tell me. Okay. Ahsan. Thank you so much. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah.